The rider yanked hard on the reins, jerking his horse to a sudden stop on the ridge. Smoke. Thin gray, rising steady from the chimney of the ranch house that was supposed to be dead and empty. He had locked every door 6 weeks earlier, nailed the windows shut, left it to the wind and silence. Yet in the biting October air the warm smell of fresh-baked bread drifted up the slope, and beneath it low, weary women's laughter forged by long hardship. The laughter cut off the instant his boots hit the porch steps. He shoved open the door he had once nailed shut. 4 women turned sharply to face him inside the house he no longer recognized. None smiled. None looked away. From the back room came a small, fragile cry. A baby was crying. Silas Brennan saw the smoke before he saw the house. It stopped him cold, made him reach for his gun. Because smoke meant people, and people in his experience meant trouble. The thin gray line rose through the cold October air of 1879. The smoke rose steady and sure as if it had every right to be there. He pulled his horse to a stop on the ridge and stared down at the ranch he had bought 6 weeks earlier from Ezekiel Dalton. Arizona territory stretched out around him in shades of brown and gold, endless, unforgiving, beautiful in its harshness. When he had ridden away after signing the deed, the place had looked half dead. The roof sagged like an old man's back. The windows were dull with years of accumulated dust. The yard was a tangle of weeds and broken fencing. A man could fix those things alone. That had been the plan 6 weeks of solitude to rebuild not just the ranch but himself, to put distance between who he had been and who he wanted to become. Now bread was baking somewhere below him. He could smell it even from this distance. Warm flour, yeast, a touch of wood smoke, the smell of home. The word felt wrong in his mouth, foreign, like a language he had forgotten how to speak. His jaw tightened until his teeth ached. No one was supposed to be living there. He had made sure of it, locked every door, boarded the windows that would not close properly, left clear signs that this property was claimed. He nudged his horse forward, following the narrow path down toward the house. The closer he got, the stranger it became. 4 horses stood in a corral that had not existed when he first inspected the place. They were brushed clean, watered, tied with the kind of care that spoke of people who understood animals, who respected them. A patch of earth beside the house had been turned into straight garden rows, military straight, precise. Squash vines curled low over the soil, their broad leaves catching the afternoon sun. Bundles of drying herbs hung beneath the porch eaves, sage, chamomile. Others he could not identify from this distance. Someone had not just trespassed on his land. They had settled in, claimed it, made it theirs in the weeks he had been gone. By the time Silas dismounted, the anger in his chest had sharpened into cold certainty. He had learned to control rage in the cavalry. Rage got men killed. What he felt now was colder, the certainty that he had been played. Again, that the world had taken something from him. Again. And he was tired of losing ground. Laughter drifted through the cabin wall just as his boots hit the porch steps. Women's laughter, low, tired, real. The kind of laughter that came from people who had earned it through hardship. Then it stopped all at once, cut off as cleanly as a knife through thread. The silence that followed felt like a held breath, like the moment before a storm breaks. Silas climbed the steps, one hand resting near his holster, out of habit more than intent. He had left the cavalry 3 years ago, had sworn he would never wear a gun again except for hunting. But some instincts never left you. Some reflexes were burned too deep into muscle and bone to ever fully fade. The front door gave under his hand without resistance. He knew he had locked it before leaving, had tested it twice, but the lock hung broken now, splintered wood around the frame. Someone had forced it, then fixed it well enough to function. Warmth hit him first when he stepped inside, real warmth from a well-tended fire, not the cold emptiness he had left behind. Then light, sunlight streaming through windows that had been scrubbed clean, through glass that sparkled, then the sight of a room that no longer matched his memory. A fire burned bright in the stone hearth. Someone had cleaned out the chimney, fixed the flue. stacked wood with the precision of someone who knew that winter was coming and preparation meant survival. A sturdy table sat near the kitchen corner, scarred by use but carefully built. Someone had planed the wood smooth, fitted the joints tight. 4 chairs stood around it. The chairs didn't match, but each had been mended with care by different hands. Quilts had been hung along one wall to block the draft that always came through the north side. Herbs and drying flowers swayed gently from the rafters, creating patterns of shadow and light. The floor had been scrubbed, not just swept, but scrubbed until the old wood showed its grain. The windows washed until they were nearly invisible. The whole place carried the rough, stubborn care of people who had worked with their hands because they had no other choice, because survival demanded it, because giving up was not an option they could afford. 4 women turned to face him. None of them smiled. None of them looked away. The oldest stood nearest the table. She had silver threading through her dark hair like veins of ore through stone. It was pulled back in a practical braid that hung down her back. Her eyes were brown and calm. They did not flinch when they met his, did not look away. There was strength in the way she held her shoulders, the kind born from years of endurance, the strength of someone who had learned to endure more than she could ever control, who had survived by bending instead of breaking. She wore a plain dress that had been mended multiple times, each repair done with care, with small, even stitches that spoke of patience, of making do, of refusing to waste anything that could still be used. Beside the hearth stood a younger woman with black hair that caught the firelight. Her eyes were dark and fixed on him with an intensity that made him pause. Her eyes measured him the way a scout measures terrain, taking his measure the way a scout measures terrain, looking for weaknesses, for advantages, for what could be used and what could not. She was striking in a way that had nothing to do with conventional beauty. It was in the set of her jaw, the way she stood, the coiled readiness in her posture. Silas noticed that she had placed herself half a step in front of the others. Protective, a guardian stance, the kind soldiers took when they expected trouble. Her hands hung loosed at her sides, but he could see the tension in her fingers, ready to move, ready to fight if necessary. A woman with reddish-brown hair stood near the back hallway, both hands white-knuckled around a bundled blanket, holding it against her chest like a shield. She could not have been more than 20 years old. Her face was lovely in the way young faces often are, unmarked by time, still holding on to hope. But there was strain in it now, lines around her eyes that should not have been there yet, a tightness in her mouth, and fear she was trying hard to hide, failing. Her eyes kept darting to the hallway behind her, to whatever she was protecting. The 4th woman stood slightly apart from the others, dark-haired, straight-backed. She had the air of someone born to a finer life than this one. You could see it in the way she held herself, in the unconscious grace of her movements. Even in a plain dress with worn cuffs and a hem that had been let down and re-hemmed multiple times, she looked like she still remembered how polished floors sounded under proper shoes, how crystal rang when touched with silver, how it felt to be someone who mattered. Her hands were folded in front of her, calm. But Silas noticed the slight tremor in her fingers, the only sign that she was not as composed as she appeared. The oldest woman spoke first. Her voice was steady, clear, the voice of someone who had spent years speaking to rooms full of people who did not want to listen. "You must be Mr. Brennan." It was not a question. Silas shut the door behind him, heard it click. The sound seemed loud in the sudden quiet. "I am." The woman by the hearth said nothing, but he felt her watching him, measuring, calculating. He took in the room once more, slower this time, seeing not just the changes but the work they represented. The changes, the care, the absolute nerve of it. These women had walked into his property, had broken his lock, had made themselves at home, and now they stood here looking at him like he was the intruder. "I bought this place to stand empty for a few weeks," he said. His voice was level, controlled, the voice he had used in the cavalry when giving orders. "Not to come back and find strangers living in it." No one answered that right away. The silence stretched, pulled tight. Then the older woman gave a slow nod, just a slight dip of her chin. That is fair. Her calm only sharpened his temper, made the anger in his chest burn hotter. Fair. The word came out harder than he intended. We knew this day would come, she said. Her voice remained steady, maddeningly steady. We only hoped for a little more time before it did. Silas let out a breath through his nose, tried to unclench his jaw. You knew I owned it. We heard, the elegant one said quietly. Her voice was softer than the older woman's, cultured, the accent of someone who had been educated. In town? Silas asked. The young woman with the bundle lowered her eyes, stared at the floor. The one by the fire answered instead. In the places where people speak freely when they believe women are too frightened to do anything with what they hear. That stopped him, made him pause, because there was truth in it. He had heard men talk, had seen how they dismissed women, especially Apache women, especially those who had nowhere to go and no one to protect them. Then he noticed something else. The four of them were not standing at random. They had formed a line, subtle, but deliberate, between him and the hallway leading to the back rooms. Silas's gaze moved there, to the dark doorway, to whatever they were protecting. All four women shifted at once. Small movement, barely visible, but practiced, rehearsed, like a maneuver. His voice cooled, dropped to the tone he had used when interrogating prisoners. What's back there? The young woman's grip tightened on the bundle. Her knuckles went white. The older woman said, Mr. Brennan, what is back there? He took a step forward. The one by the fire stepped forward too, matching him. You came in angry. Sit first. Hear us out. I did not come here to sit in my own house and ask permission to breathe. Silas took one more step toward the hallway. Every woman in the room moved. Not wildly, not with panic. They simply closed ranks, tightened the line, made it clear he would have to go through them. It was such a quiet act of defiance that his anger changed, shifted, because these were not thieves braced to run, not squatters looking for an easy mark. These were people protecting something, or someone. His eyes landed on the young woman with the bundle. Her face had gone pale, bloodless. Move, he said. No, she whispered. The word was so soft it almost disappeared, almost got lost in the crackle of the fire. Almost. But he heard it, and he saw the determination in her eyes, the kind that came from having nothing left to lose. Then from the back room came a sound so small it might have been the creak of the floorboards, might have been the wind, might have been nothing. But Silas knew better. He had heard that sound before, in villages, in camps, in the moments before everything went wrong. A baby cried. The room went still. Even the fire seemed to quiet. Not one of the women looked at him now. They all turned toward the hall, toward the sound, toward whatever they had been protecting. The young woman was the first to break. She turned without a word and hurried back, disappearing through the doorway, her footsteps quick on the wooden floor. Silas stood where he was, the heat from the fire on one side of him, cold anger on the other, both warring inside his chest. A child. There was a child in the house. 4 women had trespassed, but they had brought an infant. That changed everything. The older woman folded her hands in front of her apron, calm, centered. Now you understand. He looked at her sharply, felt his anger shift again. I understand that you brought an infant into an empty ranch in the middle of open country. His voice was harder now. I understand that you took a child to a place with no doctor, no help, no protection. We brought her somewhere she could live, said the woman by the fire. Her voice was quiet but firm. He turned to her. And what happens when the first snow comes? What happens when food runs low? What happens when someone rides out here with bad intentions and finds 4 women alone? Her gaze did not break, did not waver. That has already happened in other places. We are still here. The dark-haired woman flinched just once, a slight movement, a tensing of shoulders. Not at Silas's words, at the truth inside them, at memories she was trying not to revisit. He looked from one face to the next. Saw fear there, yes, but also resolve, exhaustion, the bone-deep tiredness of people who had been running for too long. None of them looked ashamed. That unsettled him more than tears would have, more than begging. They stood there like they had every right, like they had earned this place through their own sweat and work. He pushed past them before anyone thought to stop him. The back room had once been little more than a storage space. He remembered it that way, remembered planning to turn it into something useful, eventually, when he had time. Now a narrow bed stood against one wall. The frame was simple but solid, built by hand. A makeshift crib sat near the stovepipe where the room held the most warmth, constructed from what looked like old crates, but constructed well, with care. A patchwork blanket hung over the window, blocking the draft, creating privacy. The young woman stood beside the crib with a baby against her shoulder, rocking gently, back and forth, a rhythm as old as time. The child had dark curls that caught what little light came through the covered window. A round, sleepy face flushed warm from the room. One tiny hand gripped the girl's dress, holding on, trusting. Silas stopped in the doorway, could not make himself go further. The girl turned slightly, protective even in her fear, positioning herself between him and the child. "This is Chodini," she said. Her voice shook, trembled at the end, but she got the words out. "She's mine." Silas looked at the baby, at the small fist clutching fabric, at the face that knew nothing of the world's cruelty yet. Then at the girl, at the defiance and terror warring in her eyes. There was no hardness left in him for that moment. The anger that had carried him into this room drained away, left behind only the heavy sense that this had stopped being simple the second he stepped inside, that it had never been simple, that nothing ever was. Behind him one of the floorboards creaked. The women had followed, but not too closely, giving him space, giving him time. He asked the only thing that came to him. "How old?" "8 months," the young mother said. "She was born in February." Her voice was steadier now, finding strength somewhere. Chodini stirred, blinked dark eyes, then settled again against her mother's shoulder, trusting, safe, loved. Silas had done business in 3 territories and buried both parents before he turned 25. He had bought land, sold horses, negotiated contracts. He knew something about losing ground under his feet, about having the world shift when you least expected it. But there was a difference between hearing that people had fallen on hard times and standing in front of the proof. Standing in front of a 6-month-old child breathing softly in a hidden room. A child whose mother held her like she was the only thing in the world worth protecting, because maybe she was. He looked around the room, forced himself to see it, really see it. The walls had been cleaned, scrubbed down to bare wood in places. Shelves had been built by hand, mounted to the wall with care. Jars of preserves stood in a neat row. Someone had been planning for winter, had been thinking ahead. The roof above showed fresh patchwork where leaks must have once come through. New wood fitted between old. Not perfect, but solid, functional. They had not drifted through this place, had not just squatted here waiting for him to return. They had saved it, had taken something dying and brought it back to life. He stepped back into the main room slowly, giving himself time to think, to decide. "I want the truth," he said. The older woman gave a single nod. "You deserve that. Start with names." She lifted her chin, met his eyes directly. "Delcy." The young mother came from the doorway, Chodini still in her arms. The baby was awake now, looking around with wide, dark eyes, taking in the room, the firelight, the strangers. "Guyen." The elegant woman spoke next, her voice quiet but clear. "Ishta." Last came the one by the fire, the one who had challenged him, who still watched him like he might be a threat. Her eyes held his, steady, hard. "Lozen." Silas repeated the names in silence, fixing them in place. Delcy, Guyen, Ishta, Lozen. Not just the women anymore, people, with names, with stories. Then he reached into his coat, drew out the folded deed, laid it on the table between them. The paper made a soft sound against the wood. Final. Official. "This ranch is mine," he said. "Let the words sit there. That is the law." Delcy inclined her head once, accepting it. "Yes. But I'm not throwing a baby into the cold before I know what kind of mess I've ridden into." He looked at each of them in turn. Let them see that he meant it. "So you're going to tell me exactly why you're here, how long you've been here, and who might come looking for you." Guyen's hold on Chodini tightened. The baby made a small sound. Not distressed, just aware. Ishtar looked toward the window, toward the failing light outside, toward whatever she was remembering. Delcy pulled out a chair, did not sit, just rested one hand on the back, steadying herself. "Then you'd better hear it all." And she told him. Delcy spoke first. Her voice was steady, the voice of someone who had spent years teaching, who knew how to hold a room's attention. "I was a teacher at the Indian boarding school near Fort Grant." Silas knew the place. Everyone in the territory knew it, knew what it was, what it did, where Apache children were sent to forget they were Apache, to be remade into something acceptable to white society, to have their language beaten out of them, their culture erased, their identities stripped away. "I taught reading," Delcy continued, "English scripture penmanship, everything they told me to teach." She paused, looked at the fire. "But I also taught them their own language when no one was watching, songs their grandmothers sang, stories their fathers told, the things they were supposed to forget." Her hands folded tighter, knuckles going white. "They found out. The headmaster said I was undermining the mission, that I was keeping the children savage instead of civilized." She looked at Silas without flinching, without shame. "They dismissed me. No references, no pay for the last 2 months, just a warning that if I spoke against the school, I would be arrested for inciting unrest." Silas said nothing. Because what could he say? That he had seen the results of those schools, that he had watched children come back to reservations unable to speak to their own families, unable to fit in anywhere, caught between two worlds and welcome in neither. He had. And he had done nothing, had looked the other way, had told himself it was not his business, not his problem. Delcy sat down at last, slow, like someone much older than her years. "I am 55 years old, Mr. Brennan. No one hires a woman my age, especially not one the government has labeled a troublemaker." She looked at the fire, watched the flames dance. "So I came here." Silas turned to Guyen. The young woman was swaying gently, rocking Chodini even though the baby was calm now. It was automatic, instinctive, the movement of a mother who had learned to soothe without thinking. "Your turn," he said, quietly, not unkindly. Guyen's voice was softer than Delcy's, younger, more fragile, like something that could break if handled roughly. "I married a blacksmith," she said, looking down at Chodini instead of at him. "In Tucson. His name was Thomas Greer. He was kind, at first." She paused, swallowed. "When I got pregnant, he was happy. Said he wanted a son, someone to teach the trade." Her throat worked. "But when Chodini was born—" She trailed off, could not finish the sentence. Lozen stepped closer to her, not touching, just near, present, a quiet support. Guyen took a breath and continued. "She came out with dark skin, dark hair, Apache features clear as anything." Silas understood before she said it, had seen this before, had heard the stories. "Thomas said she didn't look like him, said I must have been unfaithful, that she couldn't be his." Guyen's eyes filled, but she did not let the tears fall, refused to. "He threw us out, told the whole town I had dishonored him. People believed it. No one questioned a white man's word over an Apache woman's." She kissed the top of Chodini's head. Soft, tender. "I went back to the reservation, but they would not take me. They said I had chosen a white man, that I had abandoned my people, that I was not welcome anymore." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "So I had nowhere. no husband, no family, no home. Until I met Delcy. Delcy reached over and squeezed Nguyen's hand once, brief, firm, then let go. The gesture said everything words could not. You are not alone. You are safe here. You belong. Silas felt something twist in his chest. These women had not just been unlucky. They had been systematically failed by husbands, by family, by communities, by the very structures that were supposed to protect them. And they had survived anyway, had found each other, had built something from nothing. Silas looked at Ishta, the elegant one. She had been standing with her arms crossed, watching him, not with hostility exactly, just careful assessment, like someone who had learned to read people, to see what they were capable of before they showed it. I was married to a cavalry officer, Ishta said. Her voice had an edge to it, not anger, something colder, sharper. Lieutenant James Caldwell, stationed at Fort Bowie. She walked to the window and looked out, though there was nothing to see but darkness now. The sun had set while they were talking. James was a good man, better than most. He respected the Apache, learned some of the language, treated the scouts with dignity. She paused. Her reflection in the glass was ghostly, pale. That made him unpopular. Silas waited, knew there was more, knew the way these stories went. Last year James discovered something. Irregularities in the supply contracts. Food meant for the fort was arriving spoiled. Blankets were thin and moldy. Medicine was diluted or missing entirely. Her jaw tightened, muscles working. He started keeping a record, names, dates, amounts. He was meticulous, said if he was going to report it to the territorial governor he needed evidence they could not dismiss. She turned back to face Silas. 2 weeks later his horse threw him during a routine patrol, broke his neck. They said the saddle girth had snapped. Her eyes were dry but fierce, burning. James checked his tack every morning, every single morning. It was the first thing he did. That girth had been cut halfway through. Silas felt something cold settle in his gut, ice spreading. Who? But he already knew, already suspected. Ezekiel Dalton, Ishta said, and the name landed in the room like a stone, like a body. Silas straightened, felt the world tilt. The man I bought this ranch from. Yes. Ishta's voice was flat now. Dead. Dalton held the supply contracts for 3 forts in the territory. He was making a fortune selling the government rotten goods and pocketing the difference. She crossed her arms again, holding herself together. James found proof, and Dalton killed him for it. Silas's mind was racing, pieces clicking together, the low price for the ranch. Dalton's eagerness to sell, the way he had pushed for a quick closing, no inspection, no questions. Because if that was true, after James died, Ishtar continued, I was removed from the fort within a week. No explanation, no widow's pension, just orders to vacate officer housing immediately. She looked at him. Direct, unflinching. I had nothing, no family, no money, no husband, just the knowledge that the man who killed James was still walking free, still profiting, still destroying lives. Silas turned to Lozan, the woman by the fire. She had been silent through all of it, watching him with those sharp, unreadable eyes. Now she pushed away from the hearth and came to stand in the center of the room, right in front of him, close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her dark eyes. My father was Judge Marcus Webb, she said. Silas knew that name too. Everyone in the territory knew it. Judge Webb had been respected, fair, known for his integrity. Judge Webb had drowned crossing Devil's Creek in a storm 2 years ago. Or so the story went. It had been called a tragic accident. Unlucky weather. A good horse lost. A respected man gone. The kind of thing that happened in this country. People died. That was the way of it. Lozan reached into the pocket sewn inside her skirt, drew out a small leather journal. Worn, stained with water and age, but intact. She held it like it was made of glass, like it might shatter if handled roughly. My father kept records, she said, Land records, names, payments, signatures that changed shape depending on who was watching. She held up the journal. Let Silas see it. Let him understand what he was looking at. He found that Ezekiel Dalton had been stealing parcels through false transfers and bribed filings, forging documents, claiming Apache land that had never been legally ceded. Her voice was steady, but there was heat underneath it now, fire barely contained. He was preparing to bring it before the territorial court. He had everything documented, everything proven. She looked at Silas. Dalton found out. The room was silent. Even the fire seemed to quiet. Lozin opened the journal to a page near the back. The paper was yellowed, brittle. This was my father's last entry, October 4th, 1877. She read aloud, her voice clear, steady. I believe I am being followed. Twice this week I have seen the same rider on the road behind me. I have sent Lozin to her aunt in Prescott. If something happens to me, she will know where to find this journal. Dalton cannot be allowed to continue. She closed the book, gently, reverently. 2 days later my father drowned at Devil's Creek. They said he misjudged the current, that his horse lost footing. Her eyes met Silas's, held them. My father had crossed that creek 100 times. He knew every rock, every eddy, every shift in the current with the seasons. He would never have ridden into it during a storm unless he had no choice. Silas felt the weight of it settling over him, the full scope of what he had walked into. This went beyond trespassing, beyond women needing shelter. This was murder, multiple murders, a conspiracy that reached through the territorial government, and the man who had sold him this ranch was at the center of it all. He looked at the journal in Lozin's hand. You've had that all this time. I went back for it after my father died. He had hidden it near Devil's Creek, buried under a stone marked with a cross. He told me where in a letter he sent to my aunt the day before he died. She held it tighter. I have been too afraid to use it. Dalton has power here, the sheriff, the land office, half the businessmen in Tucson owe him money or favors. Her voice dropped, became quieter, more dangerous. If I had come forward alone, I would have ended up like my father, drowned, shot, dead in some accident that was too convenient to be real. She looked at the other women. So I ran, and I kept running until I found Delcy. Delcy spoke then, her voice cutting through the tension. We met at a mission church in Silver City, all 4 of us at different times over the course of a month. Women with nowhere to go, no family that would claim us, no law that would protect us. She looked around the room, at the home they had built. We decided to find a place together, somewhere remote, somewhere no one would think to look for us. Guyen added, we heard in town that this ranch had been sold, that the new owner had ridden away and would not be back for weeks. We thought... She trailed off, could not finish. Silas finished for her. You thought you could stay here until I came back, and then you would move on. Yes, Delcy said. That was the plan. Hide here through the winter, save what money we could, then move on in spring before you returned. But then winter started coming early, Guyen said, and Chodini got sick, fever, cough. We could not travel with her in that condition. So we stayed, Ishta continued, and we worked. We fixed what we could. We tried to make it right. Lozin's eyes were still on Silas. We know we have no claim to this place. We know you have every right to send us away. She paused. Let the silence stretch. But if you do, we have nowhere to go. Silas stood in the center of the room, surrounded by 4 women and 1 sleeping child. And for the first time in a long time, he did not know what to do. Part of him wanted to tell them to pack up and leave by morning. This was his land, his house, his right under the law. He had paid good money for it, had plans, had a future he was trying to build. But another part of him could not do it, could not look at Chodini and send her back out into the cold, could not send these women back to the world that had already failed them so completely. He walked to the window, looked out at the dark, at his own reflection in the glass, tried to think, to find the right path through this. Behind him the fire crackled. Chodini made a small sound in her sleep, A whimper. Guyen hushed her softly, automatically. The sound mothers have made since the beginning of time. Silas turned back, made his decision. "The journal," he said to Lozen. "Does it have proof? Real proof that would hold up in court?" Lozen nodded. "Names, dates, amounts. Signatures from Dalton and the men he bribed. My father was meticulous. He built cases that could not be broken. And you've kept it hidden all this time." "Yes." Silas thought for a moment, let it all settle. Then he said, "Dalton sold me this ranch for half what it was worth. I thought I was getting a bargain. Now I'm thinking he was clearing assets, moving money, getting ready to run or to weather a storm." Ishta's eyes sharpened. "He is preparing to disappear." "Or to cover his tracks," Lozen said. Silas nodded slowly. "If he finds out you are here, he will kill us," Lozen finished. No one argued with that. No one suggested she was being dramatic. They all knew, had all learned the hard way what men like Dalton were capable of when cornered. Silas looked at each of them in turn. Delcy, who had lost her livelihood for teaching children their own language, for refusing to participate in cultural genocide. Guyen, who had been thrown away by a husband who could not see past his own pride, who had been rejected by her own people for the crime of trying to build a bridge between worlds. Ishta, whose husband had been murdered for trying to do the right thing, for standing up against corruption. Lozen, whose father had been killed for the same reason, for believing that justice mattered more than power. And Chodini, 6 months old, innocent, unaware that the world had already decided she did not matter, that her life was worth less because of the color of her skin. He took a breath, let it out slowly, made his choice. "You stay." The room went still, completely still. Even the fire seemed to pause. Guyen looked up first, stunned. "What?" "You heard me," Silas said. His voice was firm now, decided. "All of you. You stay." Delcy stood slowly, like someone who did not quite believe what she was hearing. "Mr. Brennan, this place would still be rotting if you hadn't put your backs into it," he said. "Cut her off. The roof's sound, the well's clear, the garden's in. Half the furniture in this room did not exist before you touched it." He looked at Guyen. "The child stays warm." Then at Ishta. "The house has dignity." Then at Delcy. "And it's being run by someone with more sense than most men I've traded with." He turned last to Lozen. "You asked for a chance. Looks to me like you already earned it." Guyen made a sound, half sob, half laugh, and lowered her face into Chodini's blanket. Her shoulders shook. Ishta sat down hard, one hand over her eyes. Delcy let out a breath that might have been held for months. Years. Lozen said nothing. That made Silas look at her more closely. "Do you object?" he asked. She held his gaze. The edge in her was still there, sharp, dangerous, but now it stood beside something warmer, more cautious. "I object," she said, "to the look of a man who thinks generosity settles everything." He felt his mouth shift, almost a smile. "Then correct me." She leaned back slightly. "We do not need rescuing, Mr. Brennan. We need terms." Delcy gave her a sideways glance, part warning, part pride. Lozen went on. "Not charity, not pity, not some arrangement that can be torn up the first time gossip wears you down." She crossed her arms. "If we stay, we work. If we work, we have a say in what happens here. Clear agreements, fair terms." Silas stared at her for a beat. Then he nodded. "Done." Delcy blinked. "Done. Yes, proper terms. The ranch needs hands. You have them. I've got money enough to buy stock and tools before winter bites. Come spring, we build this place into a working ranch." "It is already real," Guyen said softly, looking around the room, at the home they had built. Silas glanced at her, and his expression softened. "Then we make it secure." That changed the room. You could feel it. The shift. Fear giving way to planning. Survival giving way inch by inch to future, to possibility. Delcy was the first to step into it, to accept it, to start thinking ahead. "The north fence needs resetting before deep frost," she said. Ishta lowered her hand from her face. The loft can be cleaned and turned into storage for wool and feed. Guyen kissed Chodini's head. I can keep chickens through winter if we patch the side shed. Silas looked at Lozin. She unfolded her arms. The creek crossing needs a better marker before snow, and if Dalton's men ever handled your boundary records, we should walk the outer line ourselves, make sure everything is where it should be. That sounds, Silas said, like me being very glad I did not throw you out of my house. Your house? Lozin asked. A challenge, but a gentle one. He glanced around the room, at the work they had done, at the home they had created. All right, I'll start learning. That earned him the smallest smile, but it was enough. The days that followed did not pass like a dream. They passed like work, hard, cold, necessary. Silas rode to the nearest town 2 days later, bought supplies with money he had been saving for livestock, wire for fencing, nails, lumber, seed for spring planting. He hired a man named Carson to help with the heavy work, a drifter who asked no questions and did what he was paid for. They spent a week on the north fence, resetting posts that had rotted through, stringing new wire, making it solid, making it last. Delcy organized the house with the efficiency of someone who had once managed a classroom of 30 children. She created systems, schedules, made sure everyone knew what needed doing and when. She was not bossy about it, just clear, practical, and people listened because what she said made sense. Ishta took over the finances without being asked. She had a head for numbers, for seeing patterns. She tracked every cent spent and earned with the precision of an officer's wife who had learned to stretch a military salary through months of waiting for pay that sometimes never came. She found ways to save, to economize, to make their resources go further. Guyen cared for Chodini and tended the small garden, coaxing late-season vegetables from soil that should have been too cold. She had a patience that seemed born of necessity, a gentleness with growing things. The squash came in heavy, the beans kept producing. She dried herbs and stored them away, planning for winter, for illness, for the long months ahead, and Lozin. Lozin worked beside Silas. She rode the fence line with him, her eyes scanning the land with the sharpness of someone who had learned to see trouble before it arrived. She knew the terrain in ways he didn't, which plants could be eaten, which ones healed, and which ones killed. She knew which trails the Apache used, and which the cavalry favored where water hid even in drought. She did not talk much, but when she did, Silas listened, because she was right more often than not. One afternoon in late October, they were checking the southern boundary when Lozin pulled her horse to a stop. "Someone has been here," she said. Silas looked around, saw nothing but juniper and scrub, rock and dust. "How do you know?" She pointed to a patch of disturbed earth near a juniper tree. "Hoof prints, 2 horses, recent." He dismounted and crouched beside the tracks, studied them. She was right. The edges were still sharp, not worn by wind, not filled with dust. "Could be anyone," he said. "Could be." Lozin agreed, but her tone said she did not believe that. Silas straightened, dusted off his hands. "You think it's Dalton's men?" "I think Dalton knows we are here, and I think he is watching, waiting." She looked at him, direct. "We need to be ready." That night Silas could not sleep. He sat on the porch after the others had gone to bed. The air was cold, getting colder. Winter was coming early this year. You could feel it in the wind. The stars were bright, hard points of light in an endless black sky, and his mind would not settle. He kept thinking about the tracks Lozin had found, about the journal hidden somewhere in the house, about the fact that the man who had sold him this ranch was a murderer, multiple times over, and about the 4 women inside who had no one else to protect them, who were depending on him. The door opened behind him. He did not turn. He knew who it was, could tell by the footsteps. Lozin sat down beside him, not too close, but near enough. For a while neither of them spoke, just sat in the cold and watched the stars. Then she said, "You did not have to let us stay." "I know. So why did you—" Silas was quiet for a long moment. "Let the question sit." Then he said, "Because I have done enough harm in my life. I did not want to add to it." Lawson looked at him. "You were a soldier." It was not a question. "Yes." "Cavalry." "Yes." She nodded slowly. "Did you fight Apache?" Silas's jaw tightened. "Yes." Another silence. Longer this time. Then Lawson said, "My people have a saying. The man who stops walking in blood does not erase his footprints, but he can choose a different path." She stood. "Good night, Mr. Brennan." And she went inside, left him alone with the stars and his thoughts. Silas sat there for a long time after she left, staring at the stars, thinking about footprints, about paths, about the fact that for the first time in years he felt like he might be walking towards something instead of away from it. The next morning Silas woke to the sound of horses. Not just one, several. He was on his feet and reaching for his gun before his eyes were fully open. Some instincts never faded. By the time he got to the window he could see them, 3 riders coming up the trail from the south, and he recognized the man in front. Even at this distance. Ezekiel Dalton, tall, broad-shouldered, sitting his horse like a man who owned the world. Behind him Delcy was already moving. She had heard the horses too, was waking the others, quietly, efficiently. No panic, just preparation. Guyenne appeared in the doorway with Chodini in her arms, eyes wide. Ishta came from the back room, her face pale but composed. And Lawson. Lawson stepped up beside Silas at the window, her hand resting on the knife at her belt. "He has come," she said. Silas nodded. "Stay inside, all of you." "No," Lawson said. He looked at her. "This is not a fight you can win alone," she said. Her eyes were steady. "And it is not just your fight." Before he could argue, the riders pulled to a stop in front of the house. Dalton dismounted slowly, deliberately, taking his time. A man who was not afraid, who did not need to hurry. He was a tall man, broad through the shoulders, with a face weathered by sun and years of getting his way. Gray touched his temples, lines marked his eyes, but he remained strong, vital, dangerous. Beside him were 2 men Silas recognized from town, hired hands, the kind of men who did what they were told and did not ask questions, who would hurt people for money, who would look the other way. Behind them on a 3rd horse sat Sheriff Paul Thompson, broad, heavy in the saddle, his face hard to read beneath the brim of his hat. Silas stepped out onto the porch. Lawson followed. So did Delcy, then Ishta, and finally Goyen still holding Chodini. They stood in a line behind Silas, not hiding, not running, standing, making themselves seen. Dalton's eyes swept over them, his mouth flattened. Displeasure, but not surprise. He had known they were here, had been waiting for the right moment. "So it's true," he said. His voice was deep, carrying. "You've taken in squatters, Brennan." Sheriff Thompson remained on his horse. "Mr. Brennan?" He nodded, polite, professional. Silas nodded back. "Sheriff?" Dalton stepped forward, confident. "These women are trespassing on your property, Brennan. I suggest you remove them before this becomes a legal matter." Silas crossed his arms. "This is my property. I decide who stays." Dalton's expression did not change, but his eyes flickered, cold, calculating. "You do not understand the situation." "Then explain it to me." Dalton pointed at the women. "These are Apache. They have no right to be here. No papers, no permission. Under territorial law, they should be on the reservation." Lawson stepped forward. Her voice was calm, sharp, clear. "I am the daughter of Judge Marcus Webb. I am a citizen of this territory. I have every right to be where I choose." Dalton's jaw tightened, muscles working. "Your father is dead, girl. His name means nothing now." Lawson's eyes flashed, but she did not rise to the bait, did not react the way he wanted. Instead, she said, "My father kept very detailed records, Mr. Dalton, about land fraud, about bribery, about men who steal from the government and the people they are supposed to serve." The air went very still. Even the wind seemed to pause. Dalton's face darkened. "Careful, girl." "I have his journal," Lozin said, and those 4 words landed like a gunshot, like thunder, like the end of something. Dalton took a step toward the porch, his hand drifting toward his gun. Silas moved in front of Lozin, put himself between them. "That's close enough." Dalton stopped, but his eyes were locked on Lozin now, burning. "You are lying." "Am I?" Lozin asked. She reached into her pocket, slowly, deliberately, letting him see, and pulled out the small leather journal, held it up, let him see it, let him recognize it. Dalton's face went white, then red, blood rushing. "That belongs to me." "It belonged to my father," Lozin said. Her voice was ice. "And now it belongs to the truth." Dalton turned to the sheriff. "Thompson, arrest her. She is in possession of stolen property." Sheriff Thompson shifted in his saddle, looked uncomfortable, trapped. "Mr. Dalton, I cannot arrest someone for holding their own father's belongings." "It is evidence of slander against me," Dalton snapped. "Then take it to a judge," Thompson said. His voice was flat, tired, the voice of a man who had been compromised, who knew it, who hated himself for it. Dalton's hands clenched into fists. He looked from Thompson to Silas to Lozin, and Silas could see the calculation happening behind his eyes, the realization that he could not simply take what he wanted here, not with a sheriff watching, not with Silas standing in his way, not with witnesses. So Dalton did what powerful men do when they cannot win cleanly. He smiled, cold, empty. "You are making a mistake, Brennan," he said. "These women are trouble, and trouble has a way of spreading." He turned to his horse, mounted, took his time. "You will regret this." And he rode away. The 2 hired men followed. Sheriff Thompson remained a moment longer. He looked at Silas, then at the women, then back at Silas. "Be careful," he said quietly. And then he too was gone. The silence after they left was heavier than before, thicker. Silas turned to face the women. Lozin was still holding the journal. Her hand was shaking, not from fear, from anger, from years of rage barely contained. "He will come back," she said. Silas nodded. "Then we take the journal to someone who can use it, someone Dalton does not own." Lozin met his eyes. "The federal judge in Santa Fe." "Yes," Delcy frowned. "That is 3 days' ride." Ishta added, "If you leave, Dalton will come here while you are gone." Silas had already thought of that, had been thinking of nothing else. "Then I do not go alone." He looked at Lozin. "You know the way." She nodded. "I can get us there." "Then we leave tomorrow at dawn." Guyen's voice was small, frightened. "What about us?" Silas turned to her, to Delcy, to Ishta. "You stay here. Keep the doors locked. Keep the guns loaded. If anyone comes, you do not open the door. You do not talk to them. You wait for us to come back." Delcy nodded. Strong. Ishta's face was grim but determined. Guyen clutched Chodini tighter. Lozin looked at Silas. "We should leave tonight." He shook his head. "We need supplies, ammunition, and the horses need rest." She did not argue. That evening the house was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that came before storms, before battles, before everything changed. Delcy cooked a simple meal. Beans, cornbread, what they had. No one talked much. The food sat heavy in their stomachs. Chodini fussed and Guyen walked her back and forth across the room humming softly. An Apache lullaby, old, passed down through generations. The melody was haunting, beautiful, sad. Ishta sat by the window watching the trail, looking for riders, for threats, for the danger they all knew was coming. And Lozin. Lozin sat at the table with the journal open in front of her, reading, remembering, her father's handwriting, his words, his last thoughts before he died. Silas watched her from across the room. There was something in the way she held herself, a coiled tension, like a spring wound too tight, like something about to break. He stood and walked to the table, sat down across from her. She looked up. "You should rest," he said. "We have a long ride tomorrow." "I cannot sleep." "Then talk to me." She closed the journal, ran her hand over the worn leather cover. For a moment she just looked at him, measuring, deciding whether to trust. Then she said, "My father was a good man." Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. "He believed in the law, in fairness, in doing what was right even when it was hard, even when it cost him." She traced a finger over the cover. "When I was a child, he used to tell me that the law was supposed to protect everyone, not just the powerful, not just the white, everyone." Her eyes met his. "I believed him. And now? Now I know the law only protects the people who can afford it, the people with power, with connections, the rest of us." She trailed off, did not finish, did not need to. Silas said nothing, because she was right. He had seen it too many times. Justice for the rich, consequences for the poor. That was the way of the world. Lozin leaned back in her chair. "When my father died, I wanted to scream, to fight, to make someone pay." She paused. "But I was alone, and I was afraid. So I ran." Her jaw tightened. "I have been running for 2 years, and I am tired of it." Silas nodded slowly. "Then we stop running." She looked at him. Really looked at him. "You do not have to do this. This is not your fight." "Yes, it is." "Why?" He took a breath, let it out slowly. "Because I spent years following orders I should have questioned, doing things I cannot take back, hurting people who did not deserve it, and I am tired of being the kind of man who looks the other way." He held her gaze. "So if you are going to stop running, I am going with you." For a long moment, Lozin did not speak, just sat there, looking at him. Then she nodded. Once. Firm. "Thank you." They left at dawn. The sky was pale gray, the color of ash, of smoke. The air was cold enough to see their breath, cold enough to make the horses snort and stamp. Silas and Lozin rode side by side, heading east toward Santa Fe. Behind them the ranch grew smaller, and inside it 3 women and 1 child waited, and hoped, and prayed that the man who had taken so much would finally face the reckoning he deserved. The trail to Santa Fe cut through country that remembered blood. Apache blood, cavalry blood, settler blood. The land had drunk it all, and remembered. Silas knew it, had ridden it before, years ago, in uniform, chasing people who looked like the woman riding beside him now, hunting them, killing them, following orders. He did not say that, did not need to. Lozin knew. She always knew. They rode in silence for the first hour, the sun climbing slow and cold behind them. The horse's breath came out in white plumes, and the land stretched wide, empty, except it was never really empty. Silas had learned that the hard way. There were always eyes, always tracks, always someone watching. Lozin pulled her horse to a stop near a cluster of rocks. "We rest here," she said. Not a question, a statement. Silas dismounted. His shoulder ached where the old bullet wound lived, the one he had gotten in Kansas, or maybe Missouri. They all blurred together after a while. Cold weather always woke it up, made it throb, made it remind him. Lozin did not dismount right away. She sat in the saddle, scanning the horizon, her hand resting near the rifle strapped to her saddle. "You see something?" Silas asked. "Not yet." "But you will." She looked down at him, almost smiled. "You are learning." She swung down from her horse, graceful, efficient, no wasted movement. They did not build a fire, too visible, too risky. Instead, they ate cold biscuits and dried meat, drank water from canteens that tasted like tin and dust. Lozin sat on a flat rock. Silas sat across from her. "How far to Devil's Creek?" he asked. Lozin glanced at the sky, judging the sun, reading it the way some people read books. "If we push hard, we can reach it by tomorrow evening. It is further than most people think. The land tricks you, makes distances longer. 2 days. Yes, 2 days there. 1 day in Santa Fe if we are lucky. 2 days back. 5 days total. Silas nodded. 5 days. 5 days for Dalton to move against the women at the ranch, against Delcy, against Ishta, against Goyen and Chodini. He tried not to think about it, tried to focus on the task at hand, one thing at a time. That was how you survived, how you got through. Lozen seemed to read his thoughts. Delcy knows how to shoot, she said. So does Ishta. They will be careful. I know. And Goyen is stronger than she looks. She has survived worse than Dalton. I know that too. Lozen studied him. Then trust them. I do. She stood, brushed the dust from her skirt. Come, we are wasting daylight. They rode hard through the afternoon. The land changed as they moved east, flatter in some places, rockier in others. Juniper and sage gave way to scrub oak and pine. The air got colder, thinner, and always the sense of being watched. Silas felt it prickling between his shoulder blades, that old cavalry instinct, the one that had kept him alive when so many others died. Lozen felt it too. He could tell by the way she sat her horse, alert, ready, coiled like a spring. They made camp that night in a shallow draw, hidden from the trail. Silas built a small fire, just enough to dry their clothes from the day's sweat, to take the edge off the cold. Lozen sat across from him, reading the journal again by firelight. What does it say? Silas asked. She did not look up. Everything. Dalton bribed the land office clerk in Tucson, paid him $200 to backdate transfer documents, made it look like sales had happened years earlier than they did. She turned a page. He forged signatures on cession agreements, made it look like Apache leaders had signed over land they never agreed to give up. Another page, and he sold rotten supplies to the army, charged full price for spoiled meat, moldy flour, blankets so thin they were useless. Her voice was getting harder, colder. Men died because of those blankets. Apache and soldiers both died of cold and sickness because Ezekiel Dalton wanted to save a few dollars per unit. She looked up. Her eyes reflected the firelight, burned with it. And when my father found out Dalton killed him, just like he killed Lieutenant Caldwell. Silas poked at the fire with a stick, watched the sparks rise. How do we prove it? The journal is proof. Of fraud, yes. But murder, that is harder. Lozen closed the book. My father wrote about being followed, about feeling watched. He named Dalton specifically. She tapped the cover. And he wrote that he told one other person about his suspicions, someone he trusted. Who? Sheriff Thompson. Silas looked up sharply. Thompson knew. According to this, yes. My father went to him 3 days before he died, told him everything, asked for protection. And Thompson did nothing. Worse, he told Dalton. The fire crackled. Silas felt anger rising in him, hot, sharp. So the sheriff is in on it. He is complicit. Whether through fear or greed I do not know. But he knew, and he did nothing. They slept in shifts. Silas took first watch, Lozen second. When morning came, they broke camp quickly, ate dried meat and stale biscuits, did not talk much. The silence between them had changed, no longer wary, no longer uncertain. Now it was the silence of two people moving toward the same goal, united, determined. They rode east, the land rising slowly into foothills, pine trees thickening, the air getting colder. Around late afternoon on the second day, Lozen pulled up sharply. Silas reined in beside her. What is it? She pointed to the ground. Hoof prints, fresh, 2 horses, maybe 3, crossing their path at an angle. How long ago? Silas asked. Lozen dismounted, crouched beside the tracks, touched the edge of one print with her fingertips, felt the dirt. Yesterday morning, maybe the day before. The edges are still sharp but starting to crumble. She stood, looked in the direction the tracks led, north, toward the ranch. Silas felt ice in his gut, cold, spreading. Dalton's men. Yes. Lozen's jaw was tight. They are not following us. They are circling back. To the ranch. To Delcy. To Ishta. To Guyen and Chodini. Silas turned his horse. We go back. No! Lozen's voice was sharp, hard. He looked at her. If Dalton's men are heading to the ranch, then Delcy and the others are already prepared. We talked about this. They know to lock the doors, to stay quiet, to wait. She stepped closer. If we turn back now, we lose our chance. Dalton will hide the evidence. He will disappear, and we will never get justice. Silas wanted to argue, wanted to say that justice meant nothing if the people he cared about were dead. But Lozen was right. If they turned back, Dalton won, and everything they had risked would be for nothing. Damn it, Silas said quietly. Lozen mounted her horse. We ride faster. They pushed the horses hard, harder than they should have, but there was no choice. By dawn the third day they reached Devil's Creek. The sun was just breaking over the eastern ridge. The sky bled orange and red, like a wound. The creek ran fast and loud, swollen from recent rain in the mountains. Lozen pulled her horse to a stop on the bank, stared at the water, did not move, did not speak. Silas came up beside her. This is where your father died. Yes. Her voice was barely audible over the rush of water. Silas looked at the creek. It was wide here, deep in the center. The current pulled hard, angry, relentless, but not impossible to cross. Not for a man who knew what he was doing, not for someone experienced. Where did they find him? Silas asked. Lozen pointed downstream. Half a mile that way, caught on a fallen tree. They said he had been in the water for hours, that his body was... She stopped, could not finish. She dismounted, walked to the edge of the water, stood there, looking, remembering. They said his horse panicked, that he was thrown, that he hit his head and drowned. She crouched, touched the wet stones. But my father's horse was the calmest animal I ever knew. It would not panic, not even in a storm, not even with thunder. Silas dismounted too, stood beside her. You think someone forced him in? I think someone was waiting for him, on the other side, and when he crossed they made sure he did not cross back. She stood, turned to face him. This is where it ends, Silas, one way or another. This is where we stop letting men like Dalton win. He nodded. Then we cross. They led the horses into the water. The current grabbed at them immediately. Cold, angry, powerful. The horses balked, but Silas and Lozen pulled them forward, step by step. The water rose to their knees, then their waists. Silas felt the pull, felt how easy it would be to lose footing, to go under, to be swept away. He understood now. Understood how a man could drown here even if he knew the crossing, even if he was experienced, especially if someone was waiting on the other side to make sure he did not come up. They made it across, soaked, shivering, but alive. Lozen stood on the far bank and looked back at the water. He was a good man, she said softly, and they killed him for it. Silas said nothing, because what could he say? That he was sorry, that the world was unjust. She already knew, had learned it the hardest way possible. Instead he touched her shoulder, briefly, just enough to say, I am here. You are not alone. She did not pull away. They rode until dark, then made camp in a shallow draw where the firelight would not be visible from the trail. Silas built a small fire, just enough to dry their clothes, to take the edge off the cold. Lozen sat across from him. They did not talk much, just sat in the warmth, letting their bodies recover. They slept in shifts again. When morning came, they broke camp quickly, the third day of riding. They were getting close to Santa Fe now. Another day, and they would be there. They rode east, the land rising slowly into foothills, pine trees thickening, the air getting colder. Around midday, Lozen pulled up again. Someone is following us. Silas did not doubt her, had learned to trust her instincts. How many? 2, maybe 3, staying back, keeping to the trees. Dalton's men. Yes. Silas scanned the tree line, saw nothing, but he trusted her. "What do we do?" Lawson thought for a moment. Then she said, "We lead them somewhere we want them to be." "An ambush." "Yes," she pointed ahead. "There is a narrow canyon about an hour from here, one way in, one way out. If we go through and they follow, we can trap them." Silas nodded. "Let's go." They rode on, slower now, making sure they were being followed, making sure the men behind them felt confident, felt safe. The canyon appeared just as Lawson had described, narrow, rocky, steep walls on both sides. They rode in. The sound of their horses' hooves echoed off the stone, loud, magnified. Halfway through, Lawson dismounted. "You keep going," she said. "I will wait here." Silas started to protest. She cut him off. "They are following you, not me. If you stop, they will be suspicious. If you keep going, they will come through, and I will be ready." He looked at her, at the rifle in her hands, at the hard set of her jaw. "Do not get yourself killed," he said. "I do not plan to." He rode on, through the canyon, out the other side. Then he dismounted, tied his horse, and doubled back on foot, quietly, carefully, climbing up the side of the canyon wall to a ledge where he could see down. And wait. 10 minutes later he heard them. 2 riders, moving through the canyon, cautious but not cautious enough. They were halfway through when Lawson stepped out from behind a boulder, rifle raised. "Stop!" The men pulled up hard, reached for their guns. "I would not," Lawson said. Her voice was calm, steady, deadly, and from his perch above Silas aimed his own rifle down at them. "She is not alone," he called. The men froze, looked up, saw him, and slowly, very slowly, raised their hands. "Get down," Lawson said. They dismounted. Silas climbed down from the ledge, kept his rifle trained on them. Up close he recognized one of them, a man named Carter. He had been in town the day Dalton came to the ranch, one of the hired men. The other was younger, lean, nervous, scared. "Dalton sent you," Silas said. It was not a question. Carter said nothing. Lawson stepped closer. "How many others?" Still nothing. She cocked the rifle. The sound loud in the canyon. Final. "I will ask once more. How many others?" The younger man cracked. "2 more. They went to the ranch." Silas felt his blood turn to ice. "When?" 2 days ago. 2 days. They were already there, already at the ranch." Lawson's eyes met his. He saw the fear in them, the same fear he felt, but her voice stayed steady. "What were their orders?" The young man swallowed. "To scare them, make them leave. If they did not leave—" He trailed off. "If they did not leave what?" Silas demanded. The young man looked at the ground. "Dalton said to make it look like an accident." Silas's vision went red. He took a step toward the man. Lawson's hand on his arm stopped him. "We need to move," she said. "Now." She was right. But they could not leave these 2 men free, and they could not take them along. "Tie them," Silas said. They used the men's own ropes, bound their hands and feet, tight, left them in the canyon with their horses just out of reach. "Someone will find you," Lawson said. "Eventually." And then they ran, back to the horses, mounted, and turned west, back toward the ranch, toward Delcy and Ishta and Guyen and Chodini, toward whatever Dalton's men had already done. They rode through the night, pushing the horses hard, too hard. But there was no choice, no other option. Dawn found them exhausted, the horses stumbling, foam on their flanks. But the ranch was close now, less than an hour. Silas could feel it, the wrongness, the silence that should not be there. Lawson felt it too. Her face was pale, drawn, lines of exhaustion around her eyes. They crested the ridge and looked down. The ranch stood quiet, too quiet. No smoke from the chimney, no movement in the yard, and the barn door hung open, swinging slightly in the wind. Silas's heart dropped. They rode down fast, dismounted before the horses had fully stopped. Silas ran to the house. The door was unlocked. He pushed it open. "Delcy!" No answer. The main room was a mess. Chairs overturned, broken dishes on the floor. The quilt that had hung on the wall was torn down, trampled. Ishta Guyen. Still nothing, just silence. Lozin came in behind him. Her face went white. No. Silas moved through the house. The back room, empty. Chodini's crib overturned, blankets scattered, the preserves knocked off the shelves, glass everywhere. His chest tightened. He could not breathe, could not think. Silas, Lozin's voice from outside. He ran. She was standing in the yard, looking at the ground, boot prints, lots of them, and drag marks, leading toward the barn. Silas's hand went to his gun. They approached the barn slowly. The door creaked as Silas pushed it open. Inside darkness. Then a sound, soft whimpering. Goyen. A shape moved in the corner, huddled, small. Silas ran forward. It was Goyen, clutching Chodini. Both of them filthy, terrified, but alive. Thank God. Alive. Oh, God, Silas breathed. He dropped to his knees beside them. Goyen looked up. Her face was bruised, lips split, blood dried on her chin, but her eyes were fierce. They tried to take her, she whispered. I would not let them. Chodini made small sounds, not crying, just exhausted, traumatized. Lozin knelt too. Where are Delcy and Ishta? Goyen's face crumpled. They took them. Who? Dalton's men. 2 of them. They came the day after you left. Broke in. Delcy fought them. Hit one with a pan. So did Ishta. She was shaking now. They hit Delcy. Hard. She went down. And Ishta told me to run. To hide with Chodini. So I did. I hid in here. I heard them dragging Delcy and Ishta out. Heard them say they were taking them to Dalton. Tears streamed down her face. I am sorry. I am so sorry. I should have. No, Silas said firmly. He gripped her shoulders. You did exactly right. You saved Chodini. That is what matters. Lozin stood. Her face was hard as stone. Where did they take them? I do not know. I heard one of them say something about the old fort. Fort Bowie. Silas stood too. Fort Bowie, 20 miles east. Abandoned after the Apache campaigns ended, but still standing. And Dalton had connections there, had been stationed there. Lozin looked at him. We go now. You stay here, Silas said to Goyen. Lock the doors. Do not open them for anyone but us. Goyen nodded, still shaking. Silas touched Chodini's head gently. The baby's sounds had quieted. We will bring them back, he said. And he meant it, even if it killed him. Fort Bowie rose out of the desert like a ghost, like a memory of violence. Adobe walls, crumbling in places, but still solid enough to hold prisoners, to contain people, to trap them. Silas and Lozin approached on foot, leaving the horses tied a quarter-mile back. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the empty parade ground. How do we get in? Silas asked. Lozin pointed to the east wall. There is a gap there, where the wall collapsed 2 winters ago. We can slip through. They moved silently, keeping low, using what cover there was, reached the gap, squeezed through. Inside the fort was silent, but not empty. Silas could feel it, the presence of others, the weight of watching eyes. Lozin led the way. She knew this place, had been here before, when her husband was still alive, when it was still active. They moved through the shadows, past the old stables, the commissary, the officers' quarters, and then they heard voices, male, rough, coming from the old guardhouse. Silas and Lozin crept closer, peered through a broken window. Inside, Delcy and Ishta sat on the floor, hands tied behind their backs. Delcy's face was swollen, blood dried at her temple, one eye almost shut. Ishta's dress was torn, dirt and blood on her face, but both of them were alive, still breathing, still defiant. 2 men guarded them, the same men who had been at the ranch. Silas recognized them from Dalton's crew. Where is Dalton? Lozin whispered. Not here yet, one of the men inside said. answering a question Silas had not heard. "He said he would come tonight, after he deals with Brennan and that Apache woman." The other man laughed. "They are probably dead already. Carter and Mills were supposed to handle them." Silas and Lozen exchanged a look. "We need to move now," Lozen said, "before Dalton arrives." Silas nodded. They circled to the door. Silas tested it. Locked. He looked at Lozen. She pulled a thin piece of wire from her pocket, slipped it into the lock, worked it carefully, quietly. The lock clicked. The door opened. Silas went in first, gun raised. "Do not move." The two men spun, reached for their weapons. Silas fired. Not to kill, to wound. The bullet hit the first man's shoulder. He went down screaming. The second man drew faster, got a shot off. It went wide. Hit the wall. Lozen was already moving. She hit him from the side, hard, fast. They went down together. She got the gun away from him, pressed it to his throat. "Stay down." He stayed down. Silas moved to Delcy and Ishta, cut their bonds. "Are you hurt?" Delcy shook her head. "Not badly." Ishta stood slowly, unsteady. "Guyen and Chodini?" "Safe," Silas said. "At the ranch." Relief flooded Ishta's face. Tears. Lozen tied the two men with their own ropes, gagged them. "We need to leave now," she said, "before hoofbeats, outside, multiple horses." "Too late," Silas said. They moved to the window. Through the gathering dark they could see riders approaching, 5 of them, led by a man Silas recognized even at a distance, Ezekiel Dalton, and beside him, Sheriff Thompson. Lozen's hand tightened on her rifle. "We are trapped." Silas looked around. The guardhouse had 1 door, 2 windows, thick walls. "Then we make a stand," he said. Delcy picked up one of the fallen men's rifles, checked the chamber. Ishta did the same. "I am not going quietly," Delcy said. Her voice was steady, strong. "Neither am I," Ishta agreed. Outside, the horses stopped. Dalton's voice rang out. "Brennan, I know you are in there." Silas moved to the doorway, did not open it. "What do you want, Dalton?" "You know what I want. The journal. Give it to me, and I will let you all walk away." Lozen stood beside Silas. "He is lying." "I know," Silas called back. "We do not have it." A pause. Then Dalton again. "Then where is it?" "Safe. Where you will never find it." Another pause. Longer this time. Then Thompson's voice. "Mr. Brennan, be reasonable. Come out. We can settle this peacefully." "Like you settled things with Judge Webb," Lozen shouted. "Like you settled things with Lieutenant Caldwell." Silence. Then Dalton's voice, colder now. "You have 1 minute to come out. After that we come in." Silas looked at the others. 4 people, 4 rifles, limited ammunition, against 5 men outside, with more guns, more bullets, better position. The odds were not good, but they were the only odds they had. "We hold them as long as we can," Silas said. Ishta asked, "And then?" Silas had no answer, because there was no help coming, no cavalry, no rescue. They were alone. Outside, Dalton called out again. "Time's up!" Gunfire erupted. Bullets slammed into the adobe walls, through the windows, splintering wood, kicking up dust. The noise was deafening. Silas and the others ducked, returned fire. The guardhouse filled with smoke, with the smell of gunpowder. One of Dalton's men went down, shot by Lozen. Clean, precise, but the others kept coming, spreading out, surrounding the building. "They are going to burn us out," Delcy said. She was right. Silas could see one of the men moving toward the building with a torch. "I will stop him," Lozen said. She aimed, fired, missed. The man threw the torch. It landed on the roof. The old dry wood caught instantly. Flames spread fast. Smoke began pouring in, thick, choking. "We have to go." Ishta coughed. Silas looked at the door, the only way out, and Dalton's men waiting on the other side. He made a decision. "We go together. Fast. Do not stop." He kicked the door open, and they ran, into the smoke, into the gunfire, into the night. Bullets flew. Silas felt one graze his arm, hot, burning. But he kept running. Lozen was beside him, firing as she moved, Delcy and Ishta behind. They made it to cover. A low wall, collapsed but still solid enough. Dalton's voice rang out. "Enough, enough!" The shooting stopped. Silas looked over the wall. Dalton stood in the open, gun drawn but pointed down. "You cannot win this, Brennan." "Maybe not," Silas called back, "but I can make damn sure you do not either." Dalton smiled, cold, empty. "You think you are noble, but you are just a fool." He raised his gun, aimed at Silas, and then a shot. But not from Dalton, from behind him. Dalton's eyes went wide. He looked down, at the blood spreading across his chest. Dark, wet. He turned, slowly. Sheriff Thompson stood there, gun smoking. "I am sorry, Ezekiel," Thompson said quietly, "but I cannot let this go any further." Dalton fell, to his knees first, then to his face. Still, dead. The remaining men dropped their weapons, raised their hands. Thompson walked forward, looked at Silas. "I have been a coward," he said. "For too long, Judge Webb came to me, told me everything, and I did nothing." His voice broke. "I let him die. I let Caldwell die. And I almost let you all die, too." He holstered his gun. "No more." Lozen stepped forward. "You will testify." Thompson nodded. "I will testify. To all of it." 3 days later they stood in Santa Fe, in the office of Federal Judge Harrison. An old man, white-haired, sharp-eyed, with the look of someone who had seen too much, who had stopped being surprised by human cruelty. He read the journal slowly, carefully, turning each page with deliberate attention. When he finished, he looked up. "This is damning." "Yes, sir," Lozen said. "And Sheriff Thompson will corroborate. He is on his way here now, with the men we arrested." Judge Harrison nodded, set the journal down. "Then warrants will be issued, for everyone involved. Land office clerks, supply contractors, Army officers who looked the other way." He closed the journal. "This will take time, months, maybe longer. But justice will be done." He looked at Lozen. "Your father was a good man. He would be proud." Lozen said nothing, but her eyes shone. Outside the sun was shining. The air was cold but clear. Silas stood beside Lozen on the courthouse steps. "We did it," he said quietly. She looked at him. "Almost. We still have to go home." Home. The word felt strange, but right. They mounted their horses, turned west, toward the ranch, toward Delcy and Guyen and Chodini, toward the life they were building, together. The journey back was different from the journey out. Not faster, not easier, just different. They rode in silence most of the time, the comfortable kind. Delcy and Ishta behind them. Both women sat straighter despite the bruises, despite everything. There was relief in them now, the weight of fear finally lifting. When they crested the ridge and saw the ranch below, smoke was rising from the chimney. Thin, gray, steady. Guyen had kept the fire going, had held down the fort. The door opened before they could dismount. Guyen stood there, Chodini on her hip. The baby reached out her arms when she saw Lozen, not crying, just reaching, wanting. Lozen took her, held her close, and for just a moment her shoulders shook. Silent relief. "You came back," Guyen whispered. "We promised," Delcy said gently. Inside the house smelled like coffee and bread. Guyen had been baking, keeping busy, keeping hope alive. They sat around the table, all of them, told the story, all of it. Guyen listened with wide eyes. "So he is dead?" "Yes," Lozen said. "And his men, in custody. Thompson is testifying. Dalton's network is being dismantled." Guyen looked down at her hands. "Does that mean we are safe now?" Delcy chose her words carefully. "Safer. We are safer." It was the most honest answer any of them could give. Guyen nodded, seemed to accept that. Chodini banged her hands on the table, demanding attention, demanding to be part of things. Guyen laughed, soft, genuine, and the sound of it was like light. That night after Chodini had been put to bed, Delcy called a meeting. Everyone gathered around the table, the same table where so much had already happened. Delcy spread out a piece of paper, a map she had drawn, showing the ranch, the fields, the boundaries. "We need to talk about the future," she said. Ishta nodded. "Agreed." "The ranch is secure for now," Delcy continued, "but we cannot keep living day to day. We need a plan." She looked at each of them. "We have something here, a place where Apache and White can work together, where women can make decisions, where a child like Chodini can grow up safe." She tapped the map. "But that only lasts if we are smart, if we plan, if we make this sustainable." Ishta spoke up. "We need more people, more families to build a real community." "Yes," Delcy agreed, "but people we can trust, people who share our vision." Lozen had been quiet, listening. Now she spoke. "There are Apache families on the reservation who would come, if they knew this place existed, if they knew they would be welcome." She looked at Silas. "But that depends on you, on whether you are willing to truly share this land." Silas had been thinking about this, for days, turning it over in his mind. He pulled out the deed, set it on the table. "I propose a partnership," he said. Everyone looked at him. "Not charity, a real partnership." He pushed the deed toward the center. "We split the land, equal shares. We work it together, and when it turns a profit, we share that too." Guyen's eyes went wide. "You would do that?" "I am doing that." Lozen leaned forward. "And if we disagree on how to run things, then we vote. Majority rules. Even if that means you lose, even then." Ishta smiled. "You have thought this through." "I have." Lozen studied him, long, hard, then nodded. "I accept." Delcy did not hesitate. "So do I." Ishta agreed. Guyen looked at Chodini sleeping in the next room. "I want her to grow up knowing she belongs somewhere, that she has roots." She met Silas's eyes. "Thank you." He shook his head. "Do not thank me. Just work. Make this place something worth keeping." And so it was decided. Winter came hard that year. Snow fell early, deep, cold enough to crack wood. But the ranch held. They had prepared. Food stored, firewood stacked, animals sheltered, and inside the house, warmth, light, life. Silas found himself sitting by the fire most nights, watching Chodini crawl, then pull herself up, then take her first wobbling steps. He listened to Delcy tell old Apache stories about Coyote the Trickster, about courage and survival. Guyen sang lullabies in a language he didn't understand but felt in his bones, and Ishta read aloud poetry history words that kept their minds sharp through the long winter. And Lozen sat across from him most nights, mending clothes, planning the spring planting. They did not talk much, but they did not need to. There was understanding between them now. One night after the others had gone to bed, Silas and Lozen sat alone, the fire burning low, the house quiet. "Can I tell you something?" he asked. "Yes." He took a breath. "When I was in the cavalry there was a day. We were chasing Apache who had left the reservation, trying to go north, to their old territory." His voice was low, heavy. "We caught them near a creek, maybe 10 people, mostly women and old men, a few children." Lozen was listening, completely focused. "Our orders were to bring them back alive, but our lieutenant was young, scared. He gave the order to fire warning shots, but things went wrong. Someone fired too low, hit someone, and then everyone was firing." He closed his eyes. "There was a woman, running, holding a child, maybe 3 years old. I did not think. I just raised my rifle, and I fired." The silence stretched, heavy, suffocating. They both went down. The woman was dead instantly, shot through the back, but the child was still alive, crying, bleeding from where the bullet had passed through her mother and grazed her side. His hands shook. I tried to stop the bleeding, but I did not know how. And there was no doctor, no medic, no one who cared enough to help. So I just held her, this tiny child, covered in her mother's blood, and I held her until she stopped breathing. A tear ran down his cheek. I have carried that with me every day since, the weight of it, the wrongness. When I saw Chodini, I saw that child again, and I knew I could not let it happen again. Lozan reached across, took his hand. "You cannot bring them back," she said softly. "I know. But you can choose differently now, every day. That is what matters." He looked at her. "How do you do it? Move forward after everything taken from you." She smiled, sad but real. "I do not forgive everything. Some things cannot be forgiven, should not be." She squeezed his hand. "But I choose to live anyway, to build anyway, because the alternative is to let them win, to let them turn me into nothing but grief and anger." Silas nodded, understanding. "Neither will I." They sat like that for a long time, hands joined, two people building good from ruins. Spring came slowly. The snow melted, revealed new grass, green and bright. The ranch came alive. They planted corn, squash, beans. Delcy supervised. Guyen worked the garden near the house. Chodini played nearby, dirt on her face, joy in her laugh. Free. Ishta managed the finances. And Lozan. Lozan worked beside Silas. One afternoon they were digging post holes. Silas paused, looked at her, covered in dust, hair tied back, strong, beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with softness. "What?" she asked, catching him staring. He smiled. "Just thinking how lucky I am." She raised an eyebrow. "Lucky you have been shot at, and you are digging holes in the desert sun." "Still lucky." She shook her head but smiled. "You are strange, Silas Brennan." He set down the shovel, walked to her. "But I am also serious." "About what?" "About this. About us. About building a life here together." Her smile faded, became focused. "Silas, I care about you, more than I thought I could care about anyone, and I want you to know that. When the time is right, if you will have me, I would like to build a future with you." She was quiet. Then she stepped closer, touched his face. "I care about you too." Her voice was soft. "But this is new for me. Having a home, having people, having possibilities." "I know. So I need time. Take all the time you need." She searched his eyes. "You mean that?" "I do." She kissed him then, brief, gentle, a promise. When she pulled back, she was smiling. "Now get back to work." He laughed, lighter than he had been in years. Summer came. The crops grew well, better than expected. People started to notice, travelers passing through, some friendly, some not. But word spread about the ranch where something new was being built. One day a group of riders approached, 6 Apache men, older, leaders. Delcy saw them first, called to Lozan. Lozan walked out alone, unarmed, trusting. The lead rider dismounted, old, strong, white hair in braids. He and Lozan spoke in Apache, too quiet for Silas to hear. But he watched. The old man studied Silas, measuring, then nodded, said something, touched Lozan's shoulder, brief, fatherly, then remounted, and rode away. All 6 of them. Lozan came back, different, lighter somehow. "Who was that?" Silas asked. "Gray Owl, an elder from the reservation, a friend of my father's. And he wanted to see if the stories were true." "What did he say?" Lozan smiled. "He said we are doing good work, that my father would be proud, that the ancestors are watching and pleased." Her eyes shone. "And he said if others want to come, they are welcome. He will send word." Silas felt the weight of that, the trust, the responsibility. "They are welcome," he said. By autumn, 3 more families had joined. Apache families with nowhere else to go. Who had heard about this place? This impossible place. They built new houses, small, simple, but theirs. They worked the land, tended the animals, shared the harvest. A community formed, not perfect. There were disagreements about water rights, about fence lines, about how to handle disputes, but they talked, they voted, and they figured it out, together. Delcy started a school, teaching children in English and Apache both, giving them what she had been punished for giving before. Ishta managed the growing community, organizing, planning, making sure everyone had what they needed. Guyen opened a small trading post, selling crafts the women made, baskets, pottery, blankets, beautiful things that brought in money. And Chodini grew, walking now, talking, playing with other children, loved by everyone, protected by all. One evening in late fall, Silas and Lozen sat on the porch, watching the sun set, gold and orange across the sky. "We did it," Lozen said quietly. Silas looked at the community, at the houses, the people, the children, the smoke rising from chimneys. "We did." She leaned her head on his shoulder. He put his arm around her. "Silas, yes, I am ready." He looked down at her. "Ready for what?" She smiled. "For that future you talked about." His breath caught. He shifted to face her, took her hands. "Lozen, will you marry me? Will you build this life with me? Not just as partners, but as everything." She did not hesitate. "Yes." He kissed her, deep, sure, full of hope and love and commitment. When they pulled apart, she was crying, happy tears. "We should tell the others," she said. "Not yet," he said. "Just this, just us." She laughed softly. "All right." They sat together as the sun set, as stars emerged, as their future stretched before them. They were married in the spring, a simple ceremony. Apache traditions and Christian vows blended. Delcy officiated. The whole community came. Guyen wove flowers into Lozen's hair. Chodini, almost 2 years old now, scattered petals. And when Silas and Lozen joined hands and spoke their promises, everyone knew they were witnessing a union that would change the territory. Something worth protecting. 5 years later, the ranch was transformed. 12 houses now stood where there had been one. Fields of corn and squash and beans stretched across the valley. Laughter and music filled the air. Children running, playing, growing up knowing they belonged. Delcy was 60 now, still teaching, still fierce. Her hair completely silver, her hands gnarled with age, but her mind sharp as ever. Ishta had remarried, a widower from town, a good man who respected her, who saw her strength. Guyen had found love again too, with one of the Apache men who had come to work the land. They had given Chodini a little brother. And Chodini. Chodini was 6 years old now, smart, quick, stubborn. She helped Delcy in the school, helped Guyen in the trading post. She belonged everywhere, was loved by all. Silas and Lozen had 2 children of their own, a boy and a girl, raised between 2 worlds, taught to honor both. One evening they all gathered around the fire, the whole community, sharing a meal, telling stories. Chodini asked, "Why are we different but together?" Silas looked at Lozen. She nodded. He said, "Because family is not just blood, it is choice. Every day we choose to stay, to love, to build." Delcy added, "And because different does not mean divided, it means stronger together." Chodini seemed to understand. She went back to playing with the other children. Silas looked around, at the faces in the firelight, at the life they had built, not the life he had planned, but the one he had needed, a life built not on ownership, but on choice, on trust, on the daily decision to stand together, to work together, to love together. And as the fire burned low and the stars came out, he was grateful for all of it, every hard moment, every fear, every fight, because it had led him here, to this family, this home, this life, where 4 women and a baby had become so much more, had become everything.